Wednesday, August 8th, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I'd like to talk about a few warnings by very high-profile people. The most important one I would say is Rothschild, Lord Rothschild, Jacob Rothschild. He says, and I take this from the Evening Standard, which I got last night, and I'll talk a little bit about that, more about that later on. But he says Rothschild fears for economic order. Then there's a warning or a comment by Mahmoud Ahmadinejad on Twitter. He's the former president of Iran. Some people call him Ahmadinejad. It's easier to pronounce, just a funny joke. But he says the use of the US dollar as the standard unit of currency in global markets and the world banking system is the key strength of the American empire. Things need to change. Current orders should be reordered. So there's a lot of talk about orders here. Lord Rothschild, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Lord Rothschild also warned us a couple of years ago, exactly 2 years ago, and I'll go into that before I look at what the markets are doing. So it's 9 a.m. London. Markets look, just looking at them here, look very quiet. Gold and silver are a little firmer. Gold is at 12.1360. Still kind of stuck here for the last few days, but not going lower. Range has been 12.10 to 12.16. Silver is up 4 cents at 15.41. Range has been 15.35 to 15.48. Basically, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ 100 futures are unchanged, so I won't say more than that. The pound is continuing to go lower. We're at 129.17, right near the lows. I think we made a new low for recent markets. Earlier in the week, we got down to around 129.15. The low overnight is 129.11, so we continue to go lower in the pound. Not good. The euro is firmer, a little firmer. It's at 116, so higher than we were earlier in the week. Overnight is fairly unchanged. And the dollar is considerably lower against the yen. It's down almost 0.5%, down 43 pips, just below 111 at 110.94. So what about the Chinese currency? Well, this morning the dollar is a little firmer against the yuan, 682.94. So that's actually interesting because gold is actually up as well. Crude oil is up only 2 cents at 68.63, but still fairly close to that 70 level. We could move there in fairly short order. Bond market, the 10-year yield, U.S. 10-year yield is at 2.97. So still very much near the 3% level, but below it for now. So what about all these warnings? Well, yesterday we went out for dinner in London, and why did we do that? Well, it was our silver jubilee. That's the right word for it. 25 years of marriage, and then we took the train back. And I remember always getting this paper. It used to be, for a lot of people don't know, the younger people don't know, the Evening Standard. You had to pay for it before. It was like about 20p. That was in the mid-90s, early 2000s. It was 20p. And then it became a free newspaper because they made it free and they depended on the adverts. So it's the kind of paper you get after you leave the office and you get on the train and you read through it. And one thing I noticed, even though it's free, the size has gone down. It's like it's half as thick as it used to be. That's another sign of inflation. It's shrinkflation. And I know, of course, that it's free, but not as much advertising. And I bet if they did charge a price, the price probably would have been going up. Anyway, so I get the paper just to read it in going home, and I get to the business section, And I see this here, headline, Rothschild fears for economic order. So here's the story, and I'll read a little bit of what he says. Lord Rothschild warned the post-war world order was at risk today due to rising tensions over trade between US and China and high debt levels in the Eurozone. Okay, yeah, there are trade tensions between the US and China. High debt levels in the Eurozone? Yes. What about the high debt levels in the UK? High debt levels in the US? High debt levels in China? Well, anyway, I'll go on to read this here. The financier's 3.2 billion RIT capital investment vehicle. And I'll have to say, this is, Lord Rothschild doesn't run NM Rothschild, which is the major Rothschild bank. It's his cousin, and I think now his cousin's son, who's like Paris-based. NM Rothschild bank is based in London. I think there was like some kind of conflict between the family in the early 80s, and Lord Rothschild, who was supposed to run the bank, left, and he started RIT Capital. So whenever people say, oh, the Rothschilds are doing this and that, they look at what RIT Capital is doing, which is a unit trust that publishes its accounts, and they think, oh, this is what the family is doing. But I would like to say that, no, it's not reflective of the whole Rothschild family, even though he's Lord Rothschild. Just wanted to explain that. So, yeah, the financier of the RIT Capital Investment Vehicle said it was sitting on the sidelines and not adding more to stocks because of fears the 10-year run-up in stock prices could end. This is what he says, and I quote, in 9/11 and in 2008 financial crisis, the powers of the world worked together with a common approach. Cooperation today is proving much more difficult. This puts at risk the post-war economic and security order, the 82-year-old said. So he says a bit more, but this is the most important part of it. But I remember there was a warning by Lord Rothschild again through his investment vehicle, RIT Capital, and the dollar vigilante talked about it. Trillionaire Rothschild warns his own central banking system is failing and buys gold. And this is the comment that he made 2 years ago. And I quote again, the 6 months under review have seen central bankers continuing what is surely the greatest experiment in monetary policy in the history of the world. And he goes on to say, we are therefore in uncharted waters, and it is impossible to predict the unintended consequences of very low interest rates, with some 30% of global government debt at negative yields, combined with quantitative easing on a massive scale. So back then he was telling us the truth, actually, why things are so uncertain, and that the central banks have done something they've never done before, and he warns about that. Now it's more the Eurozone and the US and China trade dispute. It's funny how he's dropped all the comments about the central banking experiment. But I think that's because they know something's going to happen, and they're going to probably blame Trump and the European Union. We know that it's because of this greatest experiment in the monetary policy in the history of the world. And Lord Rothschild said it himself, so he's just covering his bases. What about Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran? Well, he tweeted now, of course, with these sanctions coming up, that the world needs to reorder the current system, because America is really abusing its status as the global reserve currency. It's using it as a political weapon, and it shouldn't be. The currency that's used for the world should be a economic, trade, financial utility for the whole world. So I kind of agree with Mahmoud Ahmadinejad on that. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of countries doing things to help that evolve, especially China and Russia, of course. We'll have to see what happens, though. Are we going to get the new world currency, like the Economist magazine from 1988 said, in 2018? I don't know. The other interesting comment I just saw on in the Standard as well by this guy here. He's not as famous, but he's quite wealthy. He's they call him a Brexiteer tycoon, Peter Hargreaves. But he actually, Hargreaves and Lansdowne is one of the biggest stockbrokers in the UK. And he's done very well over the years. It's a, very big broker. And it says, I don't care if I lose $4 billion. So I read here, Brexiteer tycoon Peter Hargreaves today said he wouldn't care if he lost $4 billion if Jeremy Corbyn were elected. Well, Jeremy Corbyn is the Labour leader, right? Hargreaves said Corbyn would be a total disaster for the UK, but was unconcerned about a hit to his $4.6 billion wealth. If it wiped out $4 billion off and left me with $600 million, it would not change my lifestyle one iota. Separately, the business he founded, Hargreaves Lansdowne, today jacked up its dividends as profit grew 10% to £292.4 million. So here's another guy who's very wealthy, campaigned for Brexit, and he's warning that, or saying that if he lost almost everything, he wouldn't care. But he seems to put the blame on, he seems to associate this collapse with a new Labour leader, not what central banks have been doing. So yeah, a lot of, in my opinion, divergent views, no real focus on the real problem, which is the fiat money system that we've had, too much debt. Even though some of these guys have said that in the past, they seem to be gravitating towards blaming the trade wars for maybe a coming implosion of the system. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter if you'd like to contribute to the channel or donate to the channel and buy a few products, merchandise. There's some links below in the description. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.